Why is it so hard not to waste one's time? Or, to put it more precisely, what is even waste? What does it mean to waste one's time or one's life? And I don't mean necessarily as a general philosophical question of what it means to live virtuous and what is the idea of a good life. Now, when you talk about waste, we usually talk about wasted potential. We usually have a set of actions that already happened within our life at this current moment, but we still come to regret and imagine a way better alternative than we actually could implement. And so it's essentially this dissatisfaction. We wanted it then to have it a lot better, but we always failing to live up to our standards that we expect from ourselves. We fail to live up to our productivity and our ideals. Now, these ideas can be broken up into two categories. The one is concerning the self and the other is concerning the action. Now, by the action should be really obvious. Our demands, our desires that we want to implement or have implemented are actions. If you regret something not having done or having done, it's our actions. Our days are meant of hours and hours are meant of how we spend this time. There is no necessarily spending of it as per se, but more about the actions that we do. What actions do we want to live up and what actions do we don't want to live up? And actions are really peculiar if you think about them, because we cannot really articulate from where they're exactly coming from, what is necessarily an action. Now, when we try to explain how you did something, you usually try to break it down to the most simplest steps how you would have done it. And let's say you would try to explain how you built a car. Now, you could try to break the instruction down to multiple steps. Now, even if the instruction may be clearer, it can be always broken down to a certain infinity. Now, you don't come to explain how you would move your hand or what kind of thoughts would emerge about you during the process. But this certainty of evidence is what provides oftentimes naturality of certain behavior. This naturality that I'm describing is essentially the habitualness of our actions. It's the things that we do on a day-to-day basis that we don't really concern us for, but they're just happening. When we try to do a behavior such as doing homework, the doing homework isn't necessarily an action. It could be broken down to a set of actions, but actually the potentialities of what it would mean to do one's homework could include almost any form of action that we could be talking about. We could calculate, we would do a reading, and then we would have a different approach in how we would do a reading. And so there's almost this ambiguity around action in the way we would try to perform it. There's almost this uncertainty that demands a self-evidence that we cannot implement. Like, if you would struggle, for example, with being a writer, and your task would be to sit down and write a story, but you cannot come up with a new thing, like what the hell do you do? Well, look things up for how to write a story. But then you kind of look for one video, then another video, but you still cannot come up with the action. And for some people, when you're watching them, how they do it, they just can't sit down on their laptop and just come up with a story. While for others, they don't have this kind of naturalness, but it's not emerging out of nothing. Some people don't have the systematic processes that would enable such a cognition to do such a behavior. And so, the more you would try to break down actions and actually recognize how ambiguous what actions in of themselves are, it makes you really wonder what is the fundamental process from that it's emerging. It's almost like a past that we try to retrieve from that action. On the one hand, like, you could do your actions and you could have finished this project or you could finish that project. But the second perspective that I want to present here is to say, well, sure, your actions affect the world, but this world also affects you in return. Actions are usually a self-action. It's transforming yourself through your actions to find other actions. It's almost like this interactive process from that is all happening. Now, you could say these actions from that you're acting from are actually theoretically the embodiment from your environment. All these ideas or desires to want to perform or to live up to any virtues that you would set yourself up come from the environment itself, and you're just embodying or transmitting them. Now, there's one idea that I would like to share from you from Foucault, which is the concerning subjectivity. And you could essentially look at yourself in two ways. On the one hand, you're the subject, but in relation to yourself, you're also your own object. And what he means by that is essentially, when you try to look, for example, at the mirror, or when you would, for example, watch how you scored something, you're always measuring your performance. You're almost treating yourself like an object. You want yourself to look this way. You want yourself to think this way. You're almost like designing and controlling the body. So you would have a certain standard to that the body is living up from. It's almost like a price from that you tend to adapt all these influences that you want yourself to put forward to. You treat yourself as your own object. You perceive yourself in the mirror essentially as an object. You are the observed, while also being the observer. Now, the subject in the Foucauldian sense would be to say, well, you look yourself as an object and you try to define how this object should be. You try to form and define how this person should look like, think like, and behave like in any other way that you want him or her to behave. You try to form yourself into what you want yourself to be. And this forming of desires and ideals and standards aren't truly your own if you look at it as a whole picture. You try to form yourself to the ideas and standards to feel good about yourself so you can be satisfied with yourself as an object. And so these actions become like this personal self-esteem measure values from that you try to fulfill yourself. This is what we would think of as happiness and satisfaction. We want this body or ourselves as an object to have lived up to our own moral standards. We couldn't look through those moral standards from that we are thinking or from that we are operating from. We're just living them up so we won't feel regret over our own actions, over our own superego wanting ourselves to be a certain way.